guys, welcome to another video. My name is Stéphane Gonville and I have a website called freedomacademyhq.com where I help people overcome their shyness and their social anxiety. So today I just want to go through an email that I've received from someone called David, and he's going through social anxiety, and he sent me a message. And he had originally looked at my video on quitting drinking, and that I think it was called the #1 best thing you can do to stop social anxiety is to quit drinking. So yeah, David sent me a message, and I'll just go through the message, and there's a couple of pointers that I'd like to highlight, and maybe it could help you guys also. So he writes, "Hey Stéphane, I found you in YouTube and just wanted to let you know that I quit smoking around 150 days ago and drinking 120 days ago." Dude, David, congrats, man. That's huge. That is going in the right direction for sure. My position on drinking has not changed. I mean, drinking is the #1 thing that I've done to help myself, and it completely changed my life. It's step #1. And I've always told myself that, I'd rather have people that quit their addictions. I don't know if you had an addiction or not, but if there's people out there that do have an addiction to drinking, especially if you use it just to get rid of your anxiety in social situations, which is what I used to do, liquid confidence. It's the best thing that you could do for yourself. I mean, I'm nowhere near where I was before, and it's not until I stopped drinking that my life started to get way better. So keep doing it, Dave. I'm telling you, it's really gonna help you. Think about your life in like 5 years from now. It's gonna be completely different. From you, considering you continue to drink, consider that person in 5 years from now, and the you that stopped drinking is gonna be night and day. You're gonna be so much happier like this. So he continues, "Anxiety is definitely improving heaps. It's still bad, but I can manage things now that I couldn't before, such as going into the store. I still don't want to talk to the cashier, but I get through it. All of that is gonna get better." For me personally, it took me about 100 days before I even felt the slightest little kind of improvement, because when I stopped drinking, for me, and I don't know about you, but for me, the first couple of months, my anxiety actually shot up, because I was using the alcohol as a way to get rid of the anxiety. So when I stopped drinking, I didn't have that crutch anymore, and my anxiety shot up. But it was only a couple months after that my anxiety started to go down really fast. So he says, "I wanted to know if you changed other things such as your diet and exercise, etc." So David, I did not change. I mean, I've always tried to eat a little healthier, but I did not change anything in my diet. Nothing big. I mean, I'm always trying to kind of improve my diet here and there, but I have not seen a significant difference in my anxiety, in my social anxiety, by changing my diet. Exercise, it does though. Exercise is a big one for me. I mean, I can feel the difference if I go a few days without doing any exercise. I feel heavy, I feel tense, I can feel it in my body. It's like something needs to come out or something, I don't know. And when I do exercise, I just feel more relaxed in general, so I do advise you should definitely get into exercise. You're just gonna feel more relaxed in general, and it is gonna help you in social situations. He says, "I really want to go back to university in years, but speaking in class is an impossible task for me. It began for me as a group speaking and gradually worsened to the point where I was also housebound." Yeah, David, like me too. you know, that's how my social anxiety started. I was in high school, and I remember this particular situation where I was bored out of my mind and I was sleeping. I fell asleep in class, and then the professor called my name because she wanted to wake me up, and then so I woke up, right, and I was in the back of the class. So there was like a few people looking at me, and then she asked me, okay, so can you read where we were? And I didn't know what page we were on, so I got flustered. And then one of the persons in the front of the class said, "Look at how red his face is." And then the whole class looked at me, and that was like the most embarrassing moment that I could ever feel, you know. And I can remember that after that event, I started being more wary in social situations, and I'm pretty sure that's what triggered it, you know. From then on, it just started getting worse and worse. I'd avoid more stuff. I'd try to sit in front of the class. I wouldn't want to fall asleep, so I'd be very careful doing that, you know. And it just started this cycle of avoidance. Um, you know, I think that's the same thing that's kind of going on with you. Um, you could look at that, you know, because it's basically sometimes one bad situation can start it, and then you get into this vicious cycle of avoidance where you keep avoiding, but when you avoid, your anxiety keeps going up. He says, it seems to be reversing in the same pattern. Now I'm not housebound and gradually getting better, which is with one-on-one conversations. That's amazing. For me too. I had problems with that, and I mean, you know, now I can pretty much do it with anybody. But yeah, it's just gonna keep improving. I'm hoping that it will soon be back to my. I'll soon be back to my old self. There's no way I'm going back to alcohol. I was so dependent on it. It did take 90% of the anxiety away, but it made it much worse. I know what you mean, you know. It's that liquid confidence. I felt like I know I've read your message like a couple of times there, and at the end you say that you felt like a social god drinking it. I mean, I was in the same position, you know. I can't tell you how many times some people I've received the comment, you know, you're so different when you drink. You're not. You're you know, you're so different. You're much more open and all that. And yeah, it was that liquid confidence, you know. And you're right also by saying that it's much worse. It made it much worse because in the short term it makes it much better, you know. You feel like a social god, you can express yourself, you don't really care what people think about you. But in the long term, it can become a crutch, and it can be something that you rely on, and it makes your anxiety go even higher, you know, because it's just like well, I'll talk about that later, but it's kind of like the same mechanics as medication, whereas if you take the booze away, then you're left with nothing, and your anxiety can kind of spike up. I currently take propanol, which is a beta blocker. Doesn't help with mental anxiety, but stopped me from having full-blown panic. I go weeks at a time without it, but have been taking it for the last few days due to stress. So I have a couple videos on you know, medication, and my position on it is basically you should be taking it if it's to make you stop yourself from like really a bad situation. Like if you want to kill yourself or something, okay, take the medication, obviously. But I do not advise people to take medication if it's not that big of a deal, you know. I mean, if it stops you from having full-blown panic, okay, that's I'd say that's okay, in my opinion. But I mean, I would try to find a way to get off of it as soon as possible and never kind of go back to it, you know, because in my mind, I don't really see a difference between beta blockers or SSRIs or any other type of medication compared to alcohol, you know. And I know that sounds like an extreme thing to say, but I mean, you know, the mechanics are the same. It basically acts like a control behavior because it's making you dependent on it, you know, and it's making you it's making it act as a crutch. So whenever you take, you're not fixing your problem by doing this. It's just putting it further and further down the line. You know, it's like putting a band-aid. It's not actually you're not actually fixing the root cause of the problem. It's just temporarily soothing your anxiety feelings. He says, I'm so glad to find yet another person who has been in the same boat and who has overcome this condition. Overcoming to me means that I don't let it stop me from doing what I want to do anymore. And you know, because a lot of people think that overcoming social anxiety means that you'll get to a point where you never have to feel anxiety ever again, and it never shows up and you never get flustered again. But you know, there's a certain amount of it that's totally normal. So you know, I did overcome it, but maybe not in the exact way that most people would think. He says, my anxiety started in big groups of people until it gradually became hard, even one-on-one. The big groups school was when I was 17 maybe, and one-to-one probably started. Sorry, the camera just it stopped on its own there, so I'm just gonna continue where I was. What I was saying is basically, yeah, my anxiety was it really shot up when I was, you know, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23 was pretty much the worst, and it was at 23 that I quit drinking, and it's, you know, it's been better ever since, for sure. I have a job washing up in a dish in the kitchen, which I use alcohol and propanol to get settled into. Yeah, me too. I mean, I used to drink at work all the time, you know, because I needed the alcohol. That was during the time that I was the most dependent on it. I couldn't even get out of the house without drinking. You know, now that I think about it, it looked so pathetic. And but if I did not go through that, I don't know if I would have had, you know, because I had to hit rock bottom to kind of snap out of it, you know. And I feel as if you've been there, you know, you're ready to get better, and that's a good thing, you know. You've hit rock bottom. The only way to go up, the only way to go now is up. I don't need to use it for interaction with people I know at work, but damn, I need it if I have to go to the store, because his work asks him to go to the store sometimes. And you know, what I have to say about that is basically the longer you use the propanol to get through that hard period of going to the store, the longer that your fear is going to last of having to go to the store. Because what's going on is basically you having to go to the store, it creates anxiety, right? But when you use the propanol, it's kind of a relief. It relieves you from that anxiety, and now you feel better, right? But what actually goes on in your subconscious mind, because all of this is subconscious, you're not actually thinking about this, it's basically your fear is going to mount even more, because your brain is thinking, hey, what would happen if I didn't take the propanol? You know, all of that bad stuff that I'm afraid of having happen would actually happen. So your anxiety will mount up, you know. So that's why you can kind of create a vicious cycle where going to the store becomes even scarier and scarier, and you feel more dependent on the propanol each time that you have to go, you know. So I would try and find a way to kind of ease off of it, you know. Or maybe you could do you know, exercises, social comfort zone exercises, to get you to a point where you're comfortable being uncomfortable, you know, because those are the types of situations that you need to start facing. I'm 100% dedicated to crushing the anxiety, since quitting smoking and alcohol was two of the hardest things I've done. Yeah, me too, definitely. Especially the the booze. I mean, I tried quitting like 20 times, and it was, you know, I think I was building the muscle of actually quitting by trying those 20 times, and then at one point it just stuck with me, and yeah, the rest is history. Now it's time to start a good diet, exercise, and do some techniques to reprogram the mind. All of those things are good, and you know, I see a lot of people talking about reprogramming the mind, and I used to do that. I mean, if you're looking at stuff like cognitive behavioral therapy, but I know, right, the next line is say that you've been looking into EFT. And, you know, I have a few thoughts on that. I mean, you know, that's the dream, right? I mean, I was in that position. I used to hope that there was a way out there that I wouldn't need to do exposure and just basically be able to reprogram my mind and overcome my social anxiety by not having to do the scary stuff, you know. And a lot of people that I talk to, they have this yearning, you know. It's like, I'll try everything in the book except exposure, you know. And exposure is usually the one thing that you don't want to do, because obviously that's what creates the anxiety. But if I look at my past and at my situation and at what I've experienced with social anxiety, I've tried a lot of stuff that were not exposure, because I was just like, no, I'm not doing exposure, right? Like most people. And my anxiety never really got better. I mean, it helped a little bit, but it was not until I actually started facing some of my fears. And I'm not talking big stuff here, like just little stuff. Like I used to go around the block at my house when I was housebound without, you know, without being drunk in the middle of the day. And I started doing that. Then I started walking a little further, and I remember I used to go to the mall to just to just as an exercise, and it got easier and easier. And it got to a point where I am now, where I have a job where I see like 100 clients per day, and I talk with like at least, I don't know, you know, a bunch of people every day. And it's not a problem anymore, but you kind of have to get that ball rolling, you know. And you know, go for it, go for a reprogram, like reframing exercises. And you can try EFT if it works for you, but just keep in mind that you might, if you do the mind reprogramming exercises and EFT in conjunction with some exposure techniques, I mean, then the rest is history. You are going to actually, you know, make your anxiety way better, way faster. It's going to be really quick, and the anxiety is going to start going down really quick. But I would advise you that you make exposure the number one thing to try and focus on. If you had to take massive action in doing one thing for your social anxiety, it would be exposure. It would be learning how to relax in social situations, you know, using mindfulness, but learning how to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, you know. That's what I did, and I'm pretty certain that 99.9% of the people who had this problem and who came out of it, they did it by doing some type of exposure, you know. So just keep that in mind. I know I could do any job if I drank alcohol, and I'm a social god if I had a few drinks. Yeah, me too. I used to love drinking, and it just wasn't for me because it made everything much worse. But I feel that it's more of a physical thing, man, like I need to detox or something. Yeah, I think the best way to do that is just to drink only water for like a couple months, you know. I think that would really help. I didn't do that, but I did that kind of recently, and I felt a lot better. Like my body was looser, and I just felt a lot better in general. So, you know, you could look into that, but like I said, don't try to rely on other stuff like detox, diet, exercise, EFT, or mind reframing exercises and stuff like that. All that is good to do, but you know, it's like the solution is is staring you right in the face, you know, it's exposure. So if you do all of those other things, even if you work your ass off at doing all of those things, it's gonna help you, but not as much as if you did exposure, you know, if you made exposure the central piece of your, you know, recovery. He says, to be honest, man, I feel like I don't want to be alive anymore. I've been trying too hard to cure this anxiety and it's getting worse. Sorry to put on a downer on things, but I truly feel finished. Anyways, take care, man. So no, you're not, David, you're not putting a downer on me. I mean, I've been in your position and I can't tell you how many times I wanted to kind of, you know, end my life. And everything is better now. So I know we messaged on the phone there, and I told you, you know, Sikon, don't, if I can do it, you can do it, that's for sure. You can get better, just hang in there. There's a lot of stuff that you can do to get better. And you know, you say that you've been trying too hard to cure this anxiety, and from the looks of your message, you know, you've probably been working really hard, but you might not have been putting those efforts in the right thing, you know. If I was to tell you to do one thing, you know, to concentrate on one thing, like I said previously, it would be trying to figure out how to do exposure. And, you know, I don't want to push this down your throat, but my whole book is about exposure. The whole thing is about how to take someone that is housebound to help him basically, you know, get to a point where you can do exposure. And I have like a little social boot camp in there where you can do exercises in front of the mirror and then eventually start going to the mall and stuff like that, you know. So I mean, the thing that I get about your message, everything's good. I would concentrate on, you know, doing exposure. And you know, exposure can be sorry, there's like sounds all over. Exposure can be tapering off of the medication. That is a form of exposure, you know. That could be your first type of exposure if you wanted to do. So yeah, I'll leave it at that because I don't want to make this message too long. So David, thanks for your message. For the people, if you're someone that wanted to get some of my personal help like David, you can go on my website, which is freedomacademyhq.com, and click on the contact tab and send me a message describing your situation, and I'll get back to you and try and do a video response if you let me.